Okay, tonight's guest speaker is Charles Chessler. Um, Marilyn, are you here to introduce Charles?
She's not here.
Okay, so Charles, you can introduce yourself.
Sure thing. No worries, no worries. Never at much of a loss for words, as Chris will tell you, and Jennifer will. So, first of all, oh, am I hearing? Thank you for having me. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, all you guys. I'm going to give a little background about myself for those of you who don't know me. For those of you who do, it'll be a little bit of a repetition. I'm going to tell you my energy is not quite what it usually is. About 2 hours ago, literally, I started feeling postnasal drip and a little So I took some Dayquil an hour ago. So I don't want you to, those of you who are used to me, confuse a lower energy with not caring and not being enthusiastic. But that's just where I'm at a little bit. My background, a very brief background, is I was an actor until the 90s. I gave it up because I could never make enough money to pay my bills, so it wasn't fun anymore. So I worked my way out of debt. I became a personal trainer, and but I had this creative hole that needed filling. And in 2005, I picked up a little point and shoot camera to help cope with my father being ill. He had 4 major surgeries over 2 years at Mount Sinai, which was on the other side of the park from where I lived. To cope with the stress, instead of getting on the bus, and I was running around to personal training sessions at the time like that, missing work, I started walking back and forth across Central Park, and I had this little, at the time, it was an enormous amount of money for me, $300 point and shoot camera. It was a Sony P72. It's 3 megapixels, 3-time optical zoom, and 300 bucks. And I did what many people do. I fell in love with the act, the physical act of taking photos. And that has not stopped since then. And what I realized that it was meditative and therapeutic for me because it got me out of my own head and into the world around me and away from the stress of dealing with my father and the issues around all of that and missing work and all of that kind of stuff. In 2008, I bought my first big boy camera because I discovered that there were birds in Central Park, and I had no idea. I grew up here, that we're one of the 50 top birding spots in the country because we're on the Eastern Flyway. I'm sure many of you know about that stuff. So I had a camera with me all the time, loved taking photos. And in 2011, I was like, I really want to do this for a living. And I was studying, had started studying and learning about, I didn't understand jack about settings and light and things like that when I first started. So I took many classes at B&H at the event space. I went to the ICP online, everything practicing forever. And I made the wisest decision I could have made, which was that there's always a market for headshots. So I studied for 3 years before I started charging people in 2014. And now at 63 years old, I can tell you that 6 years ago at 57, first time in my life, I succeeded in making my full-time living doing what I love. And I'm super, super grateful for that. And it filled this void, and I feel like I'm just getting started. Um, in that time, I had the pleasure and I mentor some kids and I talk about just doing the work that lives in your heart. So with the birding, I was in the park one day and I didn't even have a 400 millimeter lens yet. I couldn't afford it. I had 70 to 200 and a 1.4 time converter. And there was a gal in the park with a box and she was releasing a bird into the wild. And it ended up being this gal who runs the Wild Bird Fund, Rita Marie McMahon, who is amazing, she's an old friend now. She has a brick and mortar on 87th and Columbus. They're opening one in Brooklyn, and they save thousands and thousands of birds, many of them pigeons, every year. So I said, listen, I just got this camera. Let me think if I can get the settings and maybe I can catch a photo. So she released, it was a beautiful red summer tanager, and it literally lit on a branch for 10 seconds in a perfect kiss of light. And I thought, click, 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 and I got it. And to this day, they use that photo in their emails. And so it was a great, great feeling sort of to achieve that. And that ties in with where I've gotten. We're talking today about photography with a purpose, using your images to be helpful. There are many ways to do that. And the focus of the images I'm going to show you are with an organization called Wild Tomorrow. It used to be the Wild Tomorrow Fund. I'm an ambassador with them, and it's based in South Africa, in the KwaZulu-Natal region of South Africa. And it's run by a married couple now who live in Hell's Kitchen. They're amazing. But I met them because I wanted to get involved with the Wild Bird Fund. I never had the money to help, but I said, let me teach some classes. So I cut my teeth teaching during migration season. I would teach once a month, twice a month, free bird photography classes for them. And one of these classes, this gal, Wendy Hapgood, who is one of the people who runs Wild Tomorrow, came in, had a great time. A few months later, she came to a class I was teaching about outdoor portrait photography. We became friends. I started working, photographing their gala, things like that for them. And then at a certain point, she came on a photo walk. You do a lot of, I haven't in a while, but casual photo walks. It was just the two of us. It had snowed the day before. It was beautiful in the park, but cold. And at the end, she told me about this organization she and her now husband had just started 2 years earlier. All that to say, this will all tie in. I promise. I know it's a long intro, but here we are. So she said, we do these in order to raise money. We do these volunteer trips, and people come with us for 2 weeks. It's very inexpensive for a 2 week experience in South Africa. And basically they work and they get a hands-on experience. And then in return, they also get like 3 days of a fancy safari trip with safari drives and a nice place and all that kind of stuff. And she said, how would you feel if we did one that was photography oriented and you would be our teacher for that? So my jaw dropped open. I picked it back up and I said, are you effing kidding me? Yeah. Where do we start? So that's how I got involved with the organization. I've had the good fortune to go 4 times so far with these trips that help raise money for what we do, and I'm super grateful for it. I tend to get a little personal on these, so I haven't gone. We didn't do one last year. My brother passed last May from cancer. Took care of him for about 17 months. I did go the year before he passed, so hopefully we'll put together another trip in 2026 next year. Not going to happen this year. There's been too much flux and change. Um, and one little additional side thing in terms of having purpose with your photography, think about why do we take photos? And of course, at the beginning, it's very much like, look at me, look at me, look at me. I used to, in DP Review, I was involved with a forum, the Sony Talk Forum, and there's a guy who had a great SIG. He was like, I always shoot for the wow factor. I mean, it's a great feeling, especially when it's somebody you respect goes, wow, because we see thousands and thousands and thousands of images every day, every hour. So we do it for that. And then perhaps we want to have a legacy. Some of us, I only ever wanted to be a working photographer. I knock wood that I've achieved that. And I hope that that will keep going. And I've got a good like 20 years ahead of me doing that. But the other thing is, how can we be helpful? So aside from being an ambassador for Wild Tomorrow, I'm involved with some at-risk youth organizations, one called Spark Youth, another that a friend that's dance-oriented. I'm going to be teaching photography for them. And then the biggest one is one called Opening Act, which brings theater to underserved schools, public schools. And that is the most important one. And through that, 7 years ago, I met a young man who I started mentoring, who's become like a son to me. And he's an incredibly talented kid who comes from unfortunate circumstances, but very talented, very smart. He's now in school for music education to become a music teacher, partially because he took care of my brother the last time I was away in South Africa and they bonded. My brother was brilliant. He was a teacher in the Bronx for 25 years at DeWitt Clinton, and the kids loved and respected him. And my brother didn't suffer any fools. He was really brilliant, and he and Jacob hit it off. And they had a mutual love for music, which inspired Jacob to go ahead and he just started school like a month ago. Anyway, but there are various places and ways that if you believe in something that you can offer services as a photographer. And that's sort of the essence of this sort of thing. What else did I want to say? I'm going to try the first screen I'm going to share. I'm going to go on to the Wild Tomorrow website, and there's a 1 minute introductory video. I don't know if it'll play through doing it through the web like that, but we'll try. But it's a very good overview of basically these guys come from finance and advertising backgrounds. They're very smart and they know people who know how to make a lot of money. So they've been buying land and they just added more land and they just acquired a property that's going to be a conservation center. And we're already employing people from the community, which is a part of the important thing that we do. But this is going to employ even more, educate the children so they're invested in conservation and they're working where they live. It's not just some organization going in, doing nice things and reaping all the benefits. We very much believe in doing all that. So with that, let me
Charles,
try and.
when you share your screen, make sure you check the thing that says share sound.
Okay.
So we can hear it.
I will, and we'll find out soon. Share screen, and there's that, and there's
Share sound.
screen. Yep. Yeah, share sound. Thank you. There is that. And now let me make
And
sure.
also that the video has to be on your desktop.
It can't be from the website.
Oh,
I'm
well,
going
you
to try.
try.
Let me make sure I've got the website up. And then let me come back here. And let's do that. And there it is. And let's just try this. I got it loaded up. So you all see Fighting for a Wild tomorrow.
Yes.
So this is a great website. There's a lot of information about what we do if any of you are passionate about wildlife and want to get involved in conservation. So let's see if this will run. It's a great little video.
Great.
Great. Let me stop the share. So that is us. Gives a nice little overview. And I don't put together fancy fades and stuff like that. I'm going to share with you a bunch of images that I put together in a Lightroom collection and go through different things, birds, wildlife, rhino dehornings, rangers, and the beautiful kids that we work with. But basically, the three main things that we're doing are we're preserving wild spaces, rewilding them. There are pineapple farmers who just strip the land of all biodiversity, and there's a way to get that back over time. And so I'm trying to have created this corridor for animals so that they can migrate and roam the way they did thousands of years ago. So let me make sure that that is up. That's tooled up. Good. And I'll share the screen again. By the way, I'm a presenter. If anybody has any questions, want to jump in, raise hand, or just pipe in, please feel free to do so. And let's do that. And let's do that. And no sound, but we'll share sound anyway. So there we are. Let me move the screen sharing so I can see. So this is being out in the wild. This is on our land. And when people come for a volunteer trip with us, you travel around and you do this and you get to see giraffe and elephants and in other reserves, rhinos. We don't have rhinos yet on ours, but we have neighboring reserves that we work with. And it's a life-changing experience. And basically what you pay, I'm not trying to sell anything, but I just want to talk about all the reality of it. You pay like $4,000 plus airfare. Half of what you pay is direct donation to what we do. The other half, 2,000, it goes towards all the expenses, for while you're there for 2 weeks. And I'll talk a little bit about some of that other stuff. And let me get rid of this. And let me do that. And there we go. So I'm starting with birds, and didn't go back and I have to remember all the species and stuff, but I'm just going to share some of these different lighting situations. And this is the kind of thing that you can see. These are on drives, both on our reserve and fancy reserves. And it just mind-numbingly beautiful to see these things in real life. There's a second version of this coming up. I just wanted to show, it was a little bland, and on the background, because you're photographers, I, brought up the blue and the saturation, but I also did a version like this. Some people think that's kind of fine arty, and even going with black and white, but just to show there's so much that you can do. I work all in Lightroom now, except a very little bit sometimes in Photoshop. And all I don't like changing people at all, but in my work as a headshot and portrait photographer, sometimes some people want some things thinned out. And if they're paying me, I do what they want. So, but I do shoot for being realistic and on a nice day. This was taken on a boat, on a river boat, and we were going to see hippopotami. And this is the kind of thing that I'm really stoked about because, as you can see, shooting through a lot of brush. But the focus, this was with a 1DX Mark II and a 150 to 600, and probably very high ISO. I teach small workshops, and I always tell people, I don't care how high the ISO goes. I'd rather have an in-focus shot at high ISO. And then now with Lightroom and the Enhance tool is unbelievable for cleaning things up. You don't lose quite as much detail as you used to. I'd rather have, and even just for me, a once in a lifetime photo in focus high ISO than if you don't have a fast enough shutter speed, you have a blurry shot. And so it's not, unless you want to intentionally, you're controlling that blur. Yellow Weaver, this is also from a boat, and this is, I forget if it's October or April when the Weavers are out doing their thing. And I found out the last trip, it's fascinating. Yeah, it's October. So the men, in order to win over the women, the male Weavers, they weave this house together, and the female Weavers have to approve it. And if they don't, they tear it apart and they make the male Weavers start again. And I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, so this was the last day of a few trips ago, and I'm going to show these are some of my favorite shots. It was I was hanging off the side of the vehicle, and there was a lot of great light. This is racked out at 600 millimeters. And I make sure I have a fast shutter speed, like 1/2000th of a second for sharpness. And then this is cropped in a little bit, and that's cropped in a lot. And it's one of my favorite photos I've ever taken. The next one is probably the best bird photo. I'll never take a photo better than that. Getting those wings out like that and the head sharp. And I was in tears when I saw that. You guys know that feeling when you and again, the context for me, why I told what I told about giving up theater and acting and working my way out of debt is I never wanted for anything, but I never thought I'd be out and seeing this for real. And I get goosebumps thinking about it. Anyway, so moving on, those are out in the wild. And then one of the things we do is we sponsor bird ringing, which helps scientists track birds and keep track of their movements and the health of different species and things. So we have a guy who is our reserve manager. This is not him. This was before he was on, who is a bird specialist, and he's brilliant about many things. Kevin, you'll see some photos of him. But basically, they put nets up very early in the morning. The birds are very gently captured in the net, and then they bag the birds, and we come, and because we sponsor this, we get to be up close and personal and take photos of the birds and actually hold them and release them, which is just a beautiful experience. So I'm just going to go through some of these. This is Lisa, and she was a doctor, and she was amazing. And life-changing experience for her. Oh, by the way, these are blurry because I got cocky after I had done it 1 or 2 times. It was my second or third trip. I brought a Lens Baby Soul. So these that are blurry on the edges are manually focused. I was like, let me challenge myself. So, and one of my favorite photos ever is part of this group of stuff. This is one of our rangers and his son, and this is one of my favorite photos of all time. I was so thrilled that I got focus on the bird, and then they're there in the background. It says a lot to me about father-son relationships and teaching the next generation and being involved and caring about where you live and what you do. Yeah, this is great. And you can see there's a smartphone and people, whatever people had, they brought. And we get this very up close and personal. There's no other way I'd ever see birds this close and these gorgeous, gorgeous birds. This again, Lens Baby Soul. I was in tears when I saw this and caught focus on the eye. And then just a bunch of different species. This bird in the next slide is so cool. The bird, when you would get ready to release it, would do this and play dead. And very gently, you would turn your hand and it would fall a little and then fly off. And it was so like it was tricking you. It was a beautiful thing to see. A couple of these guys. I hope that they're a married couple and then never part from one another. Like that. This was a different day, beautiful light. I think this was with a 50 mm wide open. Light was great. This as well. It's just, I love this. And obviously, the background is on the bright side because I'm exposing for the bird. I don't care about blowing out the background in this circumstance, unless I have enough time, like with a person, to expose for the ambient light and then light the subject with a flash or a strobe, but not the case here. And the colors on this bird, and just breathtaking. Never thought I'd see this stuff in my, and it's all and part of being helpful and helping the cause. The other thing I love about our organization is that they sponsor education. So this is a gal who was part of a group and they were getting certified and learning, and it was all paid for by Wild Tomorrow. So when people donate money, it goes to things like this. We sponsor a rhino orphanage. We pay for our rhino dehornings, which are about $1,500 a piece. You'll see later, I'm going to finish, we support 3 schools. These kids will take your breath away. This is again Lens Baby Soul, which is why it's out of focus a lot on purpose. But the joy, these are people from the community who never would know about what's in their backyard if not for organizations that were well intended and wanted to involve the community. So here's some wildlife kinds of things that you see. Some of these are on drives in reserves, on the fancy drives that we get to do. Some of these are just on our land that we have, that Wild Tomorrow has. You'll see the difference. This is an image I warmed up a bit. I put the next one and not warmed up just for, that's more like what the light was doing. And these guys, they weren't fighting or anything. They were just grazing. White and black rhinos. White rhinos graze on the ground, and you can remember white. I was taught this because their mouth is wide. So white is wide. Black rhinos eat at tree level, but these grazing rhinos are white rhinos, and they're less endangered than black rhinos. But the situation is horrible now. It was getting better for a time, but poaching is through the roof. Here's a beautiful, this is end of daylight, this rhino calf, just nosing around, and where I forget how racked out I was on my 600 mm, but to be in the presence of these creatures is quite majestic. This is on a different day with different light. This was the following, these are all from the last morning on one of our trips, and we went driving. And our guide, it was one of the fancy places that we stayed, was hell-bent. They had, their own walkie-talkies, and they talked to one another about finding us these rhinos. And we parked, and they walked right by us. And I did these obviously toned up a little bit. Something I do when we have our gala fundraisers is I'll donate like a 16 by 24 metal print and that can bring $1,000, $2,000 in. There's another photographer, Martin Mayer, who's brilliant, and he has a very particular way of processing images, and people go crazy for it. In our last gala, one of his a huge framed print. They sold for $23,000. So that's really helping the world and how have photographing with purpose. His family, and he runs a business that installs kitchens and things like that. And all his spare time, aside from his family, is devoted, and he devotes and gives his time to wildlife conservation. He's based, I want to say in Johannesburg, and so he'll drive on days off and stuff. So here are some of the other beautiful. There are like, and I always forget, I have to, they're kudu, springbok, gemsbok, impalas, nyalas. All of these animals are regular animals that we see on drives, either around our properties. Not just, this is on our property, the very first trip, and obviously I exposed for the giraffes, overexposed the background, and with some dehazing and some contrast and the black slider and stuff, I was able to really make those giraffe pop. And this was taken from quite a distance. And then a single one, and they're so beautiful and stately, and they're very curious creatures, always looking right back at us. So. And this is in totally different light. Obviously, this was morning light, not late evening light, but that beautiful sun-kissed light in the morning. And we were very close. These are our giraffe. And you can see in this one, the belly's a little large. And I think not long after, within 6 months or so, she gave birth. And we've had more and more giraffe and other animals thriving on our properties, repopulating. So I love the ears on this guy. Very, very cute. This is my favorite ever zebra shot. They were just coming over like a ridge. And I got very lucky with the timing for that. You can see there's actually, where's my, oops, right back here. There's one more and maybe two more. But I like the Three Musketeers idea here. And this was, one came up and then ran off like that. Of course, we see elephants, and they are majestic and smart and sentient beings. Pinch myself to again to be able to be so close to them in their natural habitat, and to know that what we do is helping them survive and thrive. And he's like, "See you later." Any questions at this point? Do you want to open it up at all, or I can just keep plowing through? No? Okay, I'll keep going then. So this is a hippo, and obviously, and this was along the river along our property. And this amazes me. It was in the evening, and it was fairly low light at the time. And I had a long lens, 150 to 600, so the maximum aperture is 6.3, so I probably had it at f8, and I needed a fast shutter speed. This is ISO 51200, and I cleaned this up in Lightroom with Lightroom Enhance, and it boggles my mind. I just reprocessed this yesterday. I think it's gorgeous that it looks amazing. We're very lucky to be photographers at this moment in time. Our tools available to us are really something. This was the last trip, I think the last morning. There had been a kill the night before we went. It was very dark. We went the next morning and they were still hanging out. And I got to see cheetahs and I was in tears. I'd never seen them before. And this, the taking care of one another is just, it was beautiful, beautiful to see. Um, Little monkey. They're also very, very curious and they look so smart. And I think that they're also a little devilish and rascally. Um, and this was on a drive in one of the big reserves, Fancy Drive. This was an amazing image to me because we had heard that there was a a cub, and we drove and drove and couldn't see it. And literally, there were some cars, again, they talked with the walkie-talkies. We found out where it was. We couldn't get a vantage point, and he or she came out for 5 seconds. And with the focus, animal eye autofocus, I was able to catch focus on the cub, and I was amazed. And that was also another thrill for me. And again, to be able to do all this, have these experiences while helping out because of where you've chosen to spend your money. A little close up, some detail on the elephant eyelashes. Pretty beautiful, I think. So that's the wildlife section. And now there's a group called the Green Mambas that we employ. And basically, it is a fierce group of women. There's one guy. And okay, I was looking in case there was any questions. And there's one guy, and they started doing some stuff for us, and we now employ them full time. They do heavy duty physical work. They're cutting and removing invasive species, part of rewilding the land. They're looking for and removing snares with the rangers that poachers use for smaller animals and things. Very heavy, and these women are fabulous, and fierce and strong. And the important part of it is that everybody that we employ, whether it's the Rangers, the Green Mambas, they're not just taking care of a nuclear family in these villages, in the areas, the communities. These people who work are usually taking care of an extended family of 10 to 20 people. So the work is very, very meaningful. And of course, their experience bleeds out onto the other people. They get educated about it. Hopefully, children will become involved and they will be maybe running this in another generation. Who knows? And these are just the faces. So we got to hang out with them one afternoon. So I'm looking for as much open shade as possible. I'm just using a reflector here, blowing at the background and shooting pretty wide open aperture. As you can see, nice creamy bouquet back there. But these women to earn their trust is a privilege. Because they're working hard. They'd gotten to know me a little bit. It had been a couple of years since I'd been going. But you go from that, she's already friendly there, but then my favorite thing is taking the very serious ones and getting them to crack up, which could be a lot of work. So this guy is the one guy, I guess he's happy because he's working with a bunch of women, but this is him. And then I had him tone it down a little bit. So the joy, though, they're so happy to be working. This gal I love, she's so very real, trusting, but very, as what I call dropped in. Those of you know my Agreeable Strangers project. But I got a little smile out of her there, and then a little bigger one with like that. And I love this photo because she kind of let me in a little bit more. And this is all happening very quickly. I'm taking 15, 20 shots max of each person. And then there are people like this, which kind of what I'm like, just smiley and goofy. And I love this. Some people are born kind of outgoing and happy. I'm one of those people, even during rough times. And some people are not. Some people are a little more pensive, like this gal. This gal's very cool. This guy was very happy to be there working as well. He wasn't one of the Green Mambas, but he was helping out that day. A beautiful, beautiful guy, right? And this just the joy and the love. And these people have nothing. That was something I'm always reminded when I'm looking. I've never been a materialistic person, except I do want the best camera gear I can have, and I want the best computer stuff to process work. As long as I have a roof over my head and food to eat, I don't care about fancy restaurants or fancy clothing. I don't mind them, and there's nothing wrong with having a ton of money, so don't get me wrong. But basically, I'm fine with that, and I want to have experiences and I want to travel. And these folks have nothing, and they have so much joy and appreciation for the smallest things. And when I come back from these trips, I'm reminded, look at the things that people get bent out of shape over. And it's like, if you would spend half of that energy helping other people, can you imagine how great the world would be? Anyway, that's my little rant for the day. But happy, joyful people who have nothing, but they have each other and they have community and these faces and she hesitated to smile. You'll see why. But she allowed me this photo, which I thought was really, really lovely of her. I would understand why not. So and that we're almost there. And then this is some more candid stuff, you know, on a break from working. But there's that joy again. And we would joke around and stuff. I earned their trust, as I said. So now a little more serious stuff. I mean, it's all serious, but one of the major things we do is we fund rhino dehornings. And sadly, because there are poachings and a poacher will hack the rhino's horn off and will leave the rhino to bleed to death. And then if there are calves or babies, those babies will not leave the mother's side and they will starve to death, which is why there's also rhino orphanage, which we help support, which is in a very secret place because 8 years ago, though there was a different orphanage that got attacked. One of the volunteer workers was killed because of the value of the horns. It's disgusting, regardless of whether people think it's medicinal or well, the worst, even worse is people who want them for social status, wherever that is, and they have them on their office and they'll pay $60,000 for a rhino horn. So this is one of the great heroes of rhino dehorning. He's Dr. Mike Toft. He's been doing it for decades. He's brilliant. He is empathetic. He is kind. Every group that comes, he explains the whole process of what's going to happen. He talks about there's a cocktail that's used for the rhino to be darted in the butt from a helicopter, which he does, which is boggles my mind, and not to have too much medicine so that the rhino is more half awake than half not awake. You don't want them to go out too far, and then you want to do the work you have to do as quickly as possible so that they don't suffer, their body doesn't go into trauma and things like that. But he told us about the days where they would actually wrangle with a rope and try to stop the rhino physically like that. And then the rhino sustained injuries, so many of them were dying as a result of that. And he pioneered this cocktail that they now use, which is incredibly effective. Just so you know, when you see the photos, the horn is like keratin our fingernails, and they don't feel it. It doesn't hurt as long as you don't go into the bed, which is what the poachers do. And these, I still get emotional. I remember the first time I couldn't stop crying that I was able to be up close and personal. It was a privilege with it. And the people who do this work are dedicated, empathetic, kind, incredibly smart and talented people who have dedicated their lives to this. So that's Dr. Toft, amazing man. So he will go up in a helicopter like this with a very experienced pilot. This is why these things cost money. And maybe one other person. And this is another. So we are in vehicles. So there's I can't believe I get to do this. This is just breathtaking to me. So the helicopter, there's another advanced vehicle, not the one that you see here, which are trackers, and they try to flush the rhino who is in need of having his horn removed into a fairly open place. That doesn't always happen. And then when they're as close or as good as it can be, Dr. Toft or the other, whoever or whatever vet is working, will dart the rhino. Helicopter will come low. He'll hop off the helicopter. The vehicle you see here will then go in, and there are government people on there, biologists, security, all of that. They go, and the people who work on the reserve. And I'm going to introduce you to an amazing woman who's the one woman in all of South Africa, at least, who's a reserve manager who is so cool, so tough, named Karen. They will go in, and once the rhino is secured in the place that they want, kind of rolled over in the right position, if they have to roll it over, we wait at a distance and we're then given the go ahead. We're allowed to come, and we get very close because we've paid for this and people are smart about it. We don't get in the way, but they also invite us to take DNA samples, to measure the horn, take photos. It's a whole thing. So that's just another, that's the advanced vehicle. And so this is from a distance, they're turning the rhino. You can see how many people it takes to do that. We don't do that because we're not qualified. We haven't been doing this for years and decades, but amazing people doing that. And then I'm going to bounce. These are not all contiguous and from the same shoots. I just grabbed photos. But here we are. This rhino is in place, and you can see there's a thing around the ears. There's a plug in the ears there, and the eyes are covered. And that's because the dehorning is done with a chainsaw, and it's actually the quickest and most effective way to do it. But the reverberation and the sound of the chainsaw, although the rhino is half asleep, half up, it won't wake up, but it will make actually the body jump if it sees and it hears. So they cut off those senses for the rhino during the procedure. The guy on the right with the yellow vest was one of the trackers, and he's got a cleaver. He's just been hacking to make the area as clear as possible to do the work that they have to do. There's just another view. And right here, this is one of our people. This is the last trip I was on, which, excuse me, was October of 23. I was able to go still some. I thought my brother was gonna make it, but that was the last one. So
Charles,
yes,
what did they do with the horns
with the
after they
horns.
removed them?
It's an excellent question, and there are debates about the value, how to remove the value. For now, they're stored in a very secure government location, and I don't know if there are a bunch of them. There's some people say you should just deregulate, sell them so the value drops and they're not getting poached. There's some people say just burn all the horns, remove it, and keep doing this. It's an excellent question. I wish it's very complicated. I wish I knew a good answer for it, but I don't. It's an ongoing debate with those in positions of power to make decisions like that. But yeah, as long as there's value, there's going to be risk to these. So this is the little dart that you can see, and it's a very heavy duty because it has to go through not just skin, but sometimes layers of mud. And the rhinos are fine afterwards. I'll just say now, white rhinos and black rhinos are different. White rhinos are a little more docile. So after the antidote is given, we're all in vehicles at a fairly good distance. And Dr. Toft will be nearby because a white rhino will get up and just kind of get groggy and go, oh, hey, I'm back again, and kind of wander off. With a black rhino, we have to be farther away, and Dr. Toft runs to a helicopter waiting for him because a black rhino, when it wakes up, will charge the first thing it sees. It's got a little bit of a little anger thing going on, which is understandable. So here's a little bit about the stuff. This again on the right is Lisa. She's a doctor, so she helped, and that's Karin who is injecting, and I think it's a blood sample that they got from the rhino. Nadja on the left, facing us with the cap. She's a fellow ambassador with us. In the back, the guy with the white shirt crossing his arms is a helicopter pilot. And yeah, like that. That's a little close up. So a couple of people who know what they're doing to do that. This is just to show, so that's a different darting. You can see there was a little blood where it came out, and we're instructed not to go near, not that anybody would. If you get a little bit on your finger and you get it, it can be fatal. That blood is not, it's probably from the rhino from another area, but it's not anywhere near where the dart went in. But it can be messy stuff. On the right here, you can see Martin. He's the other ambassador mayor, the incredible photographer. And although because it's wide angle, it's a little exaggerated, he's in very good shape, very good guy. And here's, I don't recall if he's drawing blood for the sample here or if he was, I think that's what it is, but sometimes he gives a little more medicine. So the rhino, it needs a little more to stay relaxed. And the orange thing you can see back there is a chainsaw that's going to be used to remove the horn. So here's this is another day. You can see the horns are still intact, and you can see the eyes are covered and the ears are plugged for that reverberation stuff. That's a little bit of a close-up. And again, to be this close, and I'm there, I think it was probably my R6, and I had a 16-35 shooting wide and up close. And it never gets not emotional. And to know that you're doing something that is actually saving these creatures and in a small way, the species from extinction is a privilege.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the purpose of taking the horns off?
About the process of taking them off?
Oh, the reason for taking them off.
The reason for taking them off is because there's a sick market for rhino horn. And a rhino horn will sell for $60,000 in some mostly Asian countries. They think it has a medicinal quality. And then there are some people who also just want a horn because it's a social status thing. As a result, there are people, some of them are local community people who are not really the evil people, but they're trying to make some money and survive. So another thing with what we do is to help empower them with work and to educate them and to create work for them so they don't have to do this. They are just trying to feed their families. But there's like a syndicate and gun running people, and I saw a thing a few years ago at the Explorers Club. There's a whole people with mega gobs amount of money who are doing this just for the money. And so these people who are going in and doing the dirty work they're going in and they're hacking the horn off, and the rhinos are bleeding to death. It's horrific and disgusting. By removing the horn, you remove, they theoretically and mostly will not go ahead. They won't do it just for spite. Oh, no horn, let's kill the rhino. But that's why.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, it's a very sorry state of affairs, and it requires help from the government, the reserves having better security, fences, all of this stuff. And then we're one of many organizations who are helping to make this happen. If you think they're $1,500 a dehorning, and the horn grows back like a nail, and they need to be dehorned every 18 months to 2 years, it's a small fortune. So we do a little bit by bringing groups a couple of times a year. Um, so here's a chainsaw in action. It's yeah, it's quite an emotional thing to see. Here you can see the guy's hands plugging the ears. I guess they didn't have, or making the plugs tighter so that the rhino wasn't hearing it. And on the bottom, you can see the bigger horn had already been done. And there's from another side, these are different days. Yeah, and again, this is Karin who's holding the ears with the plugs, just to keep the rhino okay. This was from the first time I went in April of 2014. Sad, but one of my favorite shots being the impact of it. So after the horn is removed, he uses the sander to smooth. So there's to smooth the horn, and then they spray a purple antibiotic on, which he said they don't really need, but they do it just in case. This is a different day. This is with a lens baby. You can see the edges are out of focus. And I managed to get that in focus. Another one of that. This is a different day, not a lens baby, different rhino, still Dr. Toft doing amazing work. And this is after the smoothing, after dehorning, after the smoothing, and before the purple antibiotic is sprayed on. And there's the purple antibiotic goes on. And it's just a little, there's Dr. Toft, and then it's Karin on the right, some of our people taking photos on the left. And you're right. We get to be right in there with them, which is a privilege and very emotional.
I have a question.
Yes. Yes.
In any way, does dehorning the rhinoceros put them in danger because usually
Socially.
they could protect them, no, or protect themselves against other animals?
Well, and we call that, and that's a great question. It's always the other question that comes up. Basically, it's with the males in particular, they try to keep them all sort of leveled off in the dehornings. They pay attention to that. But the studies I've been shown and read said there's no social aspect. They don't defend themselves from other animals with their horns. They're big, they use their size to do that. If there is, the benefit of dehorning far outweighs not dehorning, because there will be a rhino poached every night if not for dehorning, very sadly. So this was at the end of this one of the dehornings, and that's Karin, and they're putting a tracking ankle bracelet on the rhino. It wasn't a permanent thing, and I forget why they did it, but she's just very cool, very tough, getting it all notched up and set. While they were doing that, Dr. Toft was preparing the serum to wake the rhino back up completely. And that's Karin doing the heavy lifting there. And then just some of the great people. These are the trackers, and the guy on the right is one of the helicopter pilots, and guy on the left, I think, was a security guy. And they're wonderful people, and they welcome us because they know we care, because it's just a fact of we spend our money, and obviously the organization is helping the area immensely. So, but even those who come for 2 weeks, you're like, you've chosen to do this. Thank you. Very appreciative. This is Karan with the lens baby, and you can see the intensity of the work they do is very serious, but there is a kindness and an empathy combined with a toughness and a smarts. So, and that's just, this was a white rhino, and that's Dr. Toff just waiting. It had just been woken up, and I was allowed to be kind of close to him. I don't know what focal length I was at. I wasn't super close, but kind of close, and able to get into the vehicle while the rhino was getting up and grabbing the shot. And here's the the two most impactful posts. Everybody kind of cleared really up close. This was with, I think it was a 15 to 35 when I had my R6 when I went mirrorless. And that was with a 16 to 35 with a 1DX Mark II earlier on, but just that right up close, deep enough depth of field. And I think they're kind of impactful images. And I think this is the last rhino one to show. These are our people, and it's incredibly emotional. This is Michelle, and getting to put your hand on the rhino. She was very, very moved. She might come back for another trip with us next year, as a matter of fact. Again, this is Lens Baby, which is why it's
Another
out of
question?
focus.
I have a
Yes.
question. Yeah, you've mentioned a lot of different alphanumeric numbers and model numbers, but what's the company? What's the brand of camera you're talking about?
Oh, sorry. So first of all, let me just say, I happen to be a Canon shooter because that's what I started with and invested. I'm not like, oh, Canon's great, Nikon suck. It's a great time, whether you're Nikon, Sony, Fuji. I just drew myself to an X106, waited 8 months like everybody because it fills a gap for me. Expensive little camera, but worth it. So I'm a Canon shooter because the first camera I got in 2008, I went to B&H and I looked at everything, put my hands on everything, and I went with a Canon. It was a 50D, and I went for two main reasons. Three, the ergonomics felt right to me in my hand, which is very important. The menu system made sense to me. And then thirdly, they had at the time, they still have the poor man's high-end birding lens, because I got that camera, I invested in SLR for birding. It's the 400 millimeter f5.6, which at the time I think it still is like $1,200, which is very reasonable. And so when I started birding way back in 2008, I used the 70 to 200, the f4, not the 2.8, and then and the 1.4 converter. And because Central Park, you can get fairly close, I was pretty successful with that until I could get the 400. Now I love the Sigma, the 150 to 600, not the heavy sport one, the less weatherproof and less expensive, the contemporary. It's a honey of a lens. And with an adapter, I use that on my mirrorless, and I haven't noticed any hiccups at all. It's great. So any more questions while we're paused for a second? No, okay. By the way, how am I on time? Because I know I can run long. I see it's almost, are we supposed to be done at 8 or 8:15 or Chris? Somebody? No, they all went for a nap. All right.
Sorry, Charles, I'm sorry.
That's okay. What time are we supposed to wrap so I can?
How much more do you have, or the,
I did the Rhino. I can go. I've got some Rhino orphanage, and I've got rangers and kids, and I can just run through them in 10 minutes.
yeah,
and
why
not
don't we do
say
that?
too
And
much,
then,
and
yeah,
just show a
what-
lot of faces.
yeah, we'll
Was it supposed?
go through your pictures, and then, we'll see if there are any other questions after that. then.
Okay, so this is the Rhino Orphanage, and it's a privilege to be there. Secret location. These guys are so cute, and the idea is to rewild them. Hello, butts. This was, so I'm going to take one thing. So my favorite lens of all time for outdoors is the Canon, the RF 135 f1.8. So this was shot through some slats at f2, and I love this image and the detail and that one. This was of the 15 to 35 put down through the slats to get wide, that view. And then the Rangers, okay, some of the work we do, we built cabins for them. They do this hard work. They were sleeping on this old in a tent. This goes back to 2019. We built cabins. This was them on moving day. Thrilled to have these cabins and cots and stuff. And these are some of the Rangers over time, different photo shoots with them, and just getting them to open up and chill and earn their trust. This is Greg, who is Greg is our general manager. I always mix up with him and Kevin. Brilliant man, sweetheart. And then he's very serious. And then we get that. That's Kevin, also brilliant and quite an artist, and get him to smile. So Greg famously hated to be photographed. And I said, well, you haven't been photographed by me, yo. And he grew to trust me, and we're very close. That's Martin when I'm there. He comes sometimes for a few days or a week. We bunk together. Great photographer. He allowed me some shots. This is Senna, and this is a success story. We met Senna the first year I was there. She was working in the little the restaurant in the place we were staying, and she has become the head of the housekeeping at our new conservation center 6 years later. And this is either one of her kids or one of the extended family, but we had the privilege of going to where she grew up. This is one of my favorite all-time photos, which is this is, I don't know what the relations are, but we got to be there. I was at a distance, and this kind of tableau happened, and I will treasure this photo forever. These are the Rangers. These are anti-poaching unit. The guy in the middle, Lambert, was great, and this was the last morning of our last trip. I'm gonna say a little bit about this. So he was like, "Listen, I've had the AP and Reuters here, and the guys they get these very serious shots. Do you?" And we were in a circle. Do you have somebody who can get a little personality from these guys? And I was like, "Yo." So anyway, first I found the great light, which is porch light. The light is beautiful, and then I got this with these guys. These guys are anti-poaching unit. They are serious business. And I made fun of myself, and I cracked up and made fun of them to one another, and they just were delightful, and they are doing very dangerous work. This is one of my favorite things in the world to do, literally in the world. Yeah, and I can't believe I get to do it. So, and I made prints, which I'm going to send over at some point for them. And then lastly are the kids. Yeah, the kids, right? The children. We three schools we help support, and whatchamacallit? Ugh, I'm blanking on the name. Anyway, it's a center where kids go daily for meals and help and stuff. And these kids are just lovely, and they're different, obviously backlit, exposing for the kid. And these are some of the people, the older folks are all the caregivers who are just beautiful, wonderful people. So this will be, and this is what you get to do if you come with us. We go to a school one day, and I love the expression on the caregiver's face, and then looking there. The gal in the middle holding the reflector is Haley. She is a children's author, and her husband is an illustrator. They've put a group together that's been back twice already, raising a fortune. They also know how to raise money. So inspired by it. And she came kind of last minute on that trip that we were on, fell in love with everything. So these are just the kids. And this is my favorite woman there. She is so beautiful, so heartfelt. And this just to show, so everybody stands still, and then it's like, okay, come on, guys, can we? Yeah, there we go. A little bit of personality. So you got to make fun of yourself, and then the kids, so gorgeous. And this is just natural light, finding a doorway, getting, and it's bouncing off of the floor in front of them. And then the caregivers, and I'm almost done. This kid on a repeat, and she wanted more photos, just so beautiful. Then we bring a Canon selfie printer, and we print out every kid we photograph. We make prints for them. So, and that's on the left is Tori, who's on the ground there for us. In the middle is my friend Amy, who came on the trip. Oh, I don't know why that ended up there. Okay, some more people is out of, and then the kids. And then this is Jim Anderson photograph. Everybody got a chance to photograph the kids and how adorable. This is one of my favorites. These kids love having us there. And we're making a difference in their life. And this is like, you could think, oh, serious and the poor kid, but they're very happy also. And this, I think, is almost the last one. This kid we were on our way out, and I asked him I said, come on, let me, so he gave me that. And this is my happy place. And that's Sen in the back, who's our head housekeeper at the new conservation center. And these kids will steal your hearts, and we're changing their lives. making sure they have hot meals so they can learn. We built a new kitchen for them, an education center for one, and this is definitely the last one because come on, right? And there we go. All right,
How do
made
you
it.
how do you communicate? I mean, do they speak English or is there
Yeah,
interpreters?
they speak their English is pretty good because they all study from a young age. And if not, you kind of show and you do, and they know cameras, right? And they're very, very curious. And they have us also, like Tori is there year round. And so they deal with our organization all the time. And the caregivers and the mother, they all speak English. So
A quick question, Charles. Are these kids, are they the children of some of the workers on the
yeah, they're from the
facility?
community and they're
Okay.
children of some of the workers. They're children of
Mhm.
some of the caregivers are there. Not all of them. And they come from the community. There are,
Mhm.
sometimes there are 14-year-olds who are head of households. Parents have died of AIDS or they're
Mhm.
locked away for some reason. And
Mhm.
this is about the community comes together to take care of them. And those women who are the teachers are doing incredible work. They're giving a foundation and stability to those kids.
Sure, sure. No,
So, it's
great.
hard enough you grow up here and you don't have a supportive mother and father, and you need a parental figure, you need guidance, you need somebody to step in to help you out. And they're just absent. They could be dead. They could be, because life is very hard there, really, really hard. So,
Great,
um,
great collection, Charles. Love them.
thank you, thank you, thank you. Can I just show, so I was recently hacked and I completely, for any of you, if you want to follow me on Facebook, I have a brand new Facebook personal page. It's my name, Charles Chessler. There's a purple background, my profile photo, which Jennifer took. And I've literally got like 70 people. So if anybody's interested, I post a lot on Facebook about my portrait work and then work I'm doing with Wild Tomorrow. It's all photography related, and sometimes I think it's sort of very humanity centered. So please feel free to send me a friend request. Send me a message if you do. I'll see it in the message request because I do get a lot of garbage because I'm way out there on the internet. And yeah, like that. Also, Charles Chessler Photography on Instagram. I think you sent that,
Yeah,
Chris,
that's on on the club's Facebook
on
page, and
stuff.
I
And
think
if anybody's,
you're a member of that. So if you want to put any
I,
contact information
yeah.
on that page, you can.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested, I do small like 4 people workshops for
Mhm.
portraiture and stuff like that,
Mhm.
whether studio or outdoors. Please feel free to hit me up. So
I've been on a few of them, so I can say they are a lot of fun.
they're not awful.
Of course not.
Thank you. Any more questions? I'm happy to.
Charles?
What
Yes.
country is were you in for this at this
Who?
reserve?
So what? So it's South Africa. And basically, I should get a map for these at some point. So if this is the bottom of South Africa here, and Johannesburg's over here, on on the East Coast, there's a town called Durban, and about a 3.5 hour drive north of Durban is this area, KwaZulu-Natal, where we have a bunch of land. And there's a lot of biodiversity there, which is why they chose that area. And there are neighboring reserves. Manyoni, Kruger is north of there, big famous one. And so we're working in tandem with the ones that are local to us and helping. And on World Ranger Day, we raise money. I will do a fundraiser on Facebook and we'll raise money to get 19 pair of boots for the Green Mambas. During the pandemic, we fed the community for 2 years. A $35 parcel of food would feed a family of 4 for a month. One of the things I'm most proud of ever doing, I did I did a headshot fundraiser for that in September of 2020, raised enough money. We fed 44 families for 1 month from that. They don't need a lot, and it's a great feeling that's where your photography can make a difference. An addendum to that is people will ask you for stuff when you're working all the time. And I say no all the time. It's not for somebody at your talent and your skill set is yours to offer when you feel that there's need and whatever it is, an organization that has meaning to you. And for me, I've always loved wildlife, obviously, and then the theater and kids who are at risk who come from nothing, who were just made the mistake of being born into a family without any means, but who are brilliant and creative and talented, and they need to be nurtured. So, like one thing I do once a year, the organization Opening Act, they have at the 52nd Street Project, they have a weekend, 3-day weekend of performances that grew out of the year of the work that they did all year long. So I'll camp out and I'll take headshots for all 150 students, and I do that for free. We run them through because somebody's got to do it. And if these kids are going to be meeting people, and even if one of them has some real talent, make sure he's got a headshot that speaks for him. So you can do things like this, just to wrap it back around to using your photography for good. There are a million organizations that need our help. So
Charles,
yes.
I just wanted to mention, you had a photo of a female lion, and unfortunately, there were a lot of leaves obscuring her face. You know which one I'm talking about?
I think it was one that I thought was a cub. It was just a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sure you know that there are a number of remove tools that will take away the leaves.
I
and
don't, I'm going to interrupt you. I normally don't do that, but I absolutely, for this kind of work, would never, ever, ever do it. I
Oh,
love that photo the way it is.
okay.
For this, I either got it or not. And I do like the idea that it shows some skill in shooting through leaves and picking through there. I don't say that I'm not cocky at all. I have plenty of photos of animals totally clear and stuff like that. To me, that's almost more interesting.
Okay.
And I use the remove tool all the time. It's a great tool, but for me, not for that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't mean to be mean or
No,
shoot
not
down.
at all. It's just,
Yeah.
that's interesting to hear.
Well, it'd
Yeah.
give you another reason to go back and see if you get another shot.
Well, exactly. I'm hoping for 20 more years going back once a year, So got to start working out, take care of my health so I can keep carrying that damn lens. So
But how did you get the animal so sharp? Because usually when I take those photos, I get the greenery sharp and the animals blurred.
So now you can have an animal eye autofocus. So I use back button focus, and it will find that eye from a distance. You can also, depending on how much light you have, you can stop down for slightly deeper depth of field. Or when I started in all my portraits and headshot stuff, I never focused and recomposed because you can lose focus. I would always, so if you don't have an autofocus, back button, animal, or personal eye autofocus, you just got to you have to practice like a baseball player takes his cuts, basketball players throw, so move that focus point fast. So you see something, you go, and then you maybe start thinking ahead, where might it end up? Well, I know that it's going to be on the top right third of my frame. Let me put the point there and hopefully, and then burst mode. And then combined with, so I shoot aperture priority combined with an auto ISO, which is coupled with a minimum shutter speed. And I do that, so all that I have to do is focus, use exposure compensation if I want to brighten or darken, but I will be guaranteed the shutter speed I need with those settings in one step and not two. If you do it manually, there's another step and you can miss that photo. So what happens is, if I'm shooting with a 150 to 600, I set my minimum shutter speed at 1/1600th or 1/2000th. And I'm guaranteed my ISO will move up as high as it needs to go to make sure I have that minimum shutter speed. Now, if I might not need it, I might not need 1/2000th because I might be at 150 millimeters. But generally, if you're out photographing animals, you're at the long end. So I'll take that risk that the ISO will go up higher than need be when I'm at the 150 millimeter end. And with the elephants, sometimes they're walking right by the vehicle. But for that, I'll be honest with you, I'll use my iPhone on ultra wide. If you have an iPhone in the last 5 years, they're amazing, the quality that you can get. But so it's aperture priority, it's back button autofocus, it's aperture priority combined with auto ISO with a minimum shutter speed. When I'm photographing, whether I'm in manual, when I'm in the house for studio, if I'm using natural light, I'm in aperture priority. I'm using an 85 millimeter lens most of the time. My minimum shutter speed comes down to 1/160th. If I use my 135, I'll have a minimum shutter speed of 1/200th, 1/250th, and I'm good to go. I take a photo, I know back button again, I can get the eye on the person, and then all I have to do, and with experience, you know, if they're backlit, you have to overexpose, whatever it is, you know, whatever you need to do technically like that. But threading the needle and catching focus is a skill that if you want to photograph animals and wildlife, anything, sports, must be mastered. You can work on it. So many photographers and I know kids that are starting out, they just think, oh, it's all automatic. I went and I practiced for years, and I have this new Fuji, and I'm not facile with it because it's all different, and I'm taking the time to learn it because I want to add it to my professional work to have a 35mm without switching a lens on a bigger camera, but I will not do that until I know exactly what to do without thinking, talking to you, client, whatever, whoever it is, and I'm making changes I need without thinking about it. But I won't do that, but I like the challenge because it's making my brain synapses try and meet each other up, right? But if you're not getting focus and you're here and you like to photograph birds, go to the park every day during migration and challenge yourself and master your focus on your camera. Nobody else is going to do it for you. I will tell you, it's a great feeling when you hit. So I was in tears, like when I got some of those photos, you know, that it's like, it's a beautiful thing. If you're doing it, why not do it? Really do it, you know?
Yeah, I'm usually in cheers because it's not in focus, but thank you. Appreciate
Right. Yeah. You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. Anything else? My favorite
Okay,
flavor
thank you,
ice cream is
Charles.
vanilla
It was a
chocolate chip.
wonderful presentation.
Thank
Very
you.
good. I hope everybody enjoyed it. Please, if you need to contact Charles, his information is in photo notes. It's also on the website. And he's willing to help. So take advantage of him. Abuse him, please.
But pay me.
Thank
Okay,
you.
All
thank
right.
you, everybody. Hope to
Thank
see
you.
you.
Thank you.
Get
Great
through the cold.
Great presentation.